One told David, saying, Ahithophel is among the conspirators with Absalom. And so he was the number one man that David had relied on for good information and things, and for what to do, on what he gave good counsel. Ahithophel always gave good counsel. Let's see. And so anyway, when David found out he was with Absalom, there in verse 31 of chapter 15, he says, and David said, O Lord, I pray thee, turn the counsel of Ahithophel into foolishness. That's a hard thing to do, but we've seen it done even in our days working with young people and with different situations, and I better not get off the track on all those things. You've probably heard some of them, but anyway, here, David prays that Ahithophel's counsel would be turned into foolishness. Now, this was a wise man that David relied on for counsel for 40 years. And now he knows what kind of counsel he can give, that he gives good counsel. And so we're going to see that now as we continue on. Look at chapter 16. In chapter 16 here, beginning in verse 15, it says, Absalom and all the people, the men of Israel, came to Jerusalem, and Ahithophel with him. And it came to pass, when Hushai the Archite, David's friend, was come unto Absalom, that Hushai said unto Absalom, God save the king, God save the king. See, what had happened was Hushai went out of Jerusalem with David and said, oh no, I'm going with you. You're my best friend. We've always been friends. And David says, I'll tell you what, you go back and be my spy. You be my man to go up against and see what's going on with Absalom, and you report to me through the priest, through Abiathar and Jonathan, his son, and so forth. And so he did. He went back in before Absalom came in and took over the reign there in Jerusalem after David and his family all left and headed out as quick as they could, because they knew that the armies of Absalom, and Absalom was coming in to take over Jerusalem and to rout them out. So they got out of there ahead of time, but Hushai stayed back there. He was going to take the Ark of the Covenant with him, remember? And they left it. They took it back into Jerusalem. David says, if the Lord bring me back, then it'll be there. And so we'll let that up to the Lord, he said. So anyway, Hushai's there, and now Absalom comes in and takes Jerusalem, because the King David and all his family's gone and fled. And so Absalom comes in with Ahithophel, and he came to Hushai, David's friend. He came to Absalom, and Hushai said unto Absalom, verse 16, God save the king, God save the king. He's recognizing Absalom now as the king. And so then Absalom says, yeah, right. What are you doing here, Hushai? Verse 17, is this thy kindness to thy friend? He says, this is the way you treat my dad after you were so kind and close to him? And why wentest thou not with thy friend? And Hushai tells Absalom, oh nay, but whom the Lord and his people, this people and all the men of Israel choose, his will I be. With him will I abide. Now, God apparently lets people lie for political purposes like that. You never see him reprimanded, and you see that David had him there as a spy, and he was a great man, and God recognizes Hushai as a great man. And so here he tells Absalom, oh no, if you're the king now, then I'm here with the king. That's who I serve. I serve the king. And again, verse 19, whom should I serve? Should I not serve in the presence of his son? And see how he's bolstering up Absalom? Oh, well, you're his son. I mean, here, you're the heir. Here I am serving you. What a privilege that I can serve you. And so, as I have served in thy father's presence, so will I be in thy presence. Then said Absalom to Ahithophel, give counsel among you what we shall do. So now they're deciding what to do. They've taken Jerusalem, but David and all of his family has left, and they are gone, except for Hushai, he has made the case that, oh no, I'm here with you. If you're the king now, why, that's who I'm with. Verse 21, 20, Absalom asked Ahithophel to give counsel. Now, Ahithophel said unto Absalom, Go in unto thy father's concubines which he had left to keep the house, and all Israel shall hear thee, hear that thou art abhorred of thy father, then shall the hands of all that are with thee be strong. So they spread Absalom a tent upon the top of the house, and Absalom went in unto his father's concubines in the sight of all Israel. And the counsel of Ahithophel, which he counseled in those days, was if a man had inquired at the oracle of God, the word of God. So when it was, so was all the counsel of Ahithophel, both with David and with Absalom. And so this isn't something new. Ahithophel had it all his life. He had the right counsel, and he was a good counselor. Obviously you need to be able to discern counsel, don't you? And Absalom lacked that. And God, I think, made sure of that. And God did answer David's prayer and give foolishness to Ahithophel's thinking. Now that part was all handed out. This was part of more of David's punishment, that his household would be shown openly and despised among Israel. Now in chapter 17 we see that he goes on now. Let's see, Ahithophel. By the way, Ahithophel, I believe, I have a note here that I wrote in years ago. Ahithophel was Bathsheba's grandfather. And so you see there, that part is again why Ahithophel didn't have any problem going against David, because he's the one that took his granddaughter and killed her husband and all this. So you see how sin keeps going, even though and the damages of sin, yeah, you can be forgiven, but the results are still there. Okay? And so here, moreover, Ahithophel said unto Absalom. So now he's already done this with the tents and defaming David's family and all this stuff. He says, now let me choose out 12,000 men. This is what Ahithophel's saying. Okay, now let's just wrap this thing up and the kingdom's all yours. So he says, let me now choose out 12,000 men, and I will arise and pursue after David this night. And I will come upon him while he is weary and weak-handed, and will make him afraid, and all the people that are with him shall flee, and I will smite the king only. And I will bring back all the people unto thee, and the man whom thou seekest is as if all return. So all the people shall be in peace. So he's making this statement. This is what he told Absalom to do. And he was absolutely right if Absalom was to keep his kingdom. And you'll see this as we can progress on further. Now, what could be better than his opinion here, than his counsel? Well, he's saying, and if you follow through that, he's just saying, okay, so just go out there while they're all hurrying away and just kill David, and then be done with it and bring everybody back in peace and say, oh, everything's okay. Let's go. Let's just, come on. His son's going to reign now. Absalom's the king. And so it'll be okay, and they'll come back in peace. Verse 4, and the saying pleased Absalom well, and all the elders of Israel. So all the elders of Israel that were with Absalom, including Absalom, said, that's good advice. And of course, Ahithophel was known for his good advice for over 40 years. Don't forget that. So what's God going to do about this? Let him take care of it and wipe out David? No, because he's got plans for David yet, doesn't he? And he's going to get rid of the false kingdom here of Absalom. And then said Absalom, call now Hushai, the Archite, saying, and let us hear likewise what he saith. And so he's saying, now, see, this can be wise. Get the counsel of several people and then pick which one's best. Okay? But you need to have discernment. You need to know. You need to be able to distinguish between two different things. Which one's right, which one's wrong. You need to recognize what is being said here, and that's to discernment of counsel, to discern these things. And so he does ask Hushai now to give this. And then when Hushai was come to Absalom, Absalom spake unto him, saying, Ahithophel hath spoken after this manner. Shall we do after his saying? So he's asking Hushai, shall we do what Ahithophel said? If not, speak thou. And Hushai said unto Absalom. Now this must have been a shocker to Absalom and all the elders, because Hushai says, the counsel that Ahithophel hath given is not good. Notice how he says, at this time. He didn't put it off and say, well, it's not good at all. He said, at this time. Now he's going to say, because consider this, you know. He's stalling. Verse 8, For said Hushai, Thou knowest thy father and his men, that they be mighty men. They be chafed in their minds, as a bear robbed of her whelps in the field. And thy father is a man of war, and will not lodge with the people. And so Hushai is saying this, and of course his son knows he's a man of war. He's seen him in war for 40 years, and he understands that, and he has mighty men with him. He understands that. That's all true. But it says, and they be chafed in their minds. Chafed is to, they're really angry and upset. Just like you take mama bear's cub from her, and she's going to be upset. You better be able to run fast. Faster than a bear, and I don't think you can do that if you've seen bear run. So they're like that, as a bear robbed of her whelps in the field. And thy father is a man of war. Yes, true, he was, but he's getting old. He didn't say that. And he'll not lodge with the people. Well, that's not true either anymore. He's going and staying with his family as they go as much as possible and getting everybody safely across Jordan. But Hushai gives this counsel. Behold, he is now hid in some pit or in some other place. And it will come to pass when some of them be overthrown at the first, that whosoever heareth it will say, There's a slaughter among the people that follow Absalom. So what Hushai is saying is he's going to turn the tables on you, and everybody's going to say, It's Absalom. Go get Absalom. You know, it's Absalom. Verse 10, He also that is valiant, whose heart is as the heart of a lion, shall utterly melt. For all Israel knoweth that thy father is a mighty man, and they which be with him are valiant men. And so he's saying that even the valiant men that you have, Absalom, their heart's going to melt when everybody starts shouting and turning on you and coming back on you, and because your father's a mighty man and he has valiant men with him. So what's his counsel? Verse 11, Hushai says, Therefore, because of all these things that you know, Absalom, therefore I counsel that all Israel be generally gathered unto thee from Dan even to Beersheba. That's from the north of Israel to the south of Israel. Gather everybody together, even as the sand is by the sea for multitude, and that thou go to battle in thine own person. You lead the whole host of Israel against David and his. Then the battle's going to be sure. Makes good sense, right? Just in case you had any questions about what would happen. So he's convincing. Verse 12, So shall we come upon him in some place where he shall be found, and we will light upon him as the dew falleth on the ground, and of him and of all the men that are with him, there shall not be left so much as one. He's saying, listen, if we unite the entire armies of all Israel from the north to the south, from Dan to Beersheba, then we'll go after him and nobody's going to be left. There's not a chance that his mighty men that are with him and that he can survive. So I guess that must look pretty good to Absalom. Well, yeah, that's a fail-safe system, isn't it? Well, actually, Ahithophel had the original one. But verse 13, moreover, if he be gotten into a city, then shall all Israel bring ropes to that city, and we will draw it into the river until there not be left one small stone found there. Until there be not one small stone found there. So they're going to, listen, it's that simple, Absalom. Just get everybody together so that nobody can defeat you. What's he doing? He's stalling for time, trying to give David and his family a chance to get down the road before they can catch him and get across Jordan. Verse 14, and Absalom and all the men of Israel said, the counsel of Hushai the Archite is better than the counsel of Ahithophel. Well, see how God can makes the hearts follow after something. They had no discernment. Absalom didn't have discernment between the councils here and the ones of the whole leaders of Israel were wrong. For the Lord had appointed to defeat the good counsel of Ahithophel. See there how God does that? God will take somebody else and he'll defeat the wise and the ones that are impeccable, that are perfect in their counsel, so to speak. And so the Lord had appointed to defeat the good counsel of Ahithophel to the intent that the Lord might bring evil upon Absalom. And so he's going to go after Absalom now, God is. And so he had Ahithophel counsel defeated by Hushai. Now, Ahithophel has never had his counsel rejected because it's always been so good. And so this devastates him, and we'll see more about that. Then said Hushai, verse 15, unto Zadok and to Abiathar the priest, thus and thus did Ahithophel counsel Absalom and the elders of Israel, and thus have I counseled. Now therefore send quickly and tell David, saying, lodge not this night in the plains of the wilderness, but speedily pass over, lest the king be swallowed up, and all the people that are with him. And so he sends through Jonathan and Abiathar the priest a word to David saying, get out of here quick. He says, I've stalled it off, but I don't know how long it'll last. And so Jonathan and Ahimaaz stayed by Engregel, for they might not be seen to come into the city. And a wench went and told them, and they went and told King David. So they went and told King David. However, they were spotted. Verse 18, nevertheless the lad saw them. A lad saw them and told Absalom. But they both of them away quickly. They went both of them away quickly, and came to a man's house in Bahurim, which had a well in his court, whither they went down. So they went down into the well, and the woman took and spread a covering over the well's mouth, and spread ground corn thereon, and the thing was not known. And when Absalom's servants came to the woman to the house, they said, where is Ahimaaz and Jonathan? And the women said unto them, they be gone over the brook of water. And when they had sought and could not find them, they returned to Jerusalem. And so she sent them on a wild goose chase just to save these two men. And it came to pass after they were departed that they came up out of the well and went and told King David and said unto David, arise and pass quickly over the water, for thus hath Ahithophel counseled against you. So they went back. Now remember that Abiathar was the lone priest that survived the slaughter of Doeg, if you remember that, when David had left. And so he was the one priest that had been left of all the priests out there when David stopped and got the sword of Goliath and so forth from the priests there. So anyway, they are helping him, Jonathan and Abiathar, and Ahimaaz, and so they're now get word to David. So David arose, and all the people that were with him, and they passed over Jordan. By the morning light there lacked not one of them that was gone over Jordan. So they made haste. When they got the word, David said, let's go, get out of here, everybody head for the Jordan. When Ahithophel saw that the counsel was not followed, that his counsel was not followed, he saddled his ass and arose, gat him home to his house, to his city, put his household in order, and hanged himself and died, and was buried in the sepulchre of his father. Now, Ahithophel was so put out because his counsel was always good and always right. And so here, this thing displeased him. So what did he do? He committed suicide. The only suicide that we see in the Old Testament outside of wartime, when they fell on their sword or were killed for wounds or injury or captivity. But he's the only one mentioned. You know, isn't it something that the one who betrayed Jesus in the New Testament, after he went back and threw the money down, he went and hanged himself. And so we see that here, Ahithophel, what had happened to him. Now, look at 1 Chronicles 27. Right at the end of 1 Chronicles. There. 1 Chronicles 27. This Chronicles lists all the officers of the kingdom of the children of Israel. And so if you want to know who was in charge of any of the tribes, and every tribe had 2,400 soldiers, men above the age of 20, that were given to their man in charge. And they served, it was almost like a reserve type thing. They served a month at a time. And so it went through all the tribes, with each one being like on the guard for Israel for this for that month or for that time period that they were to serve. Then at the end, it gets up to the very top here, and verse 32. Also, Jonathan, David's uncle, was a counselor. This is a different Jonathan. Now, there's a whole bunch of Jonathans in the Bible, by the way. So don't think because it says Jonathan it has anything to do with Saul. But this was David's uncle, was a counselor, a wise man, and a scribe. And Jehiel, the son of Hachmoni, was with the king's son. So these two, Jonathan, David's uncle, and this Hachmoni was with they were in charge of training the king's sons and taking care of them. And verse 33, Ahithophel was the king's counselor. He was it. He was David's counselor throughout his whole career. And Hushai the Archite was the king's companion. He was his right-hand man that was always there for anything that needed to be done. But Ahithophel was his counselor. Verse 34 says, and after Ahithophel was Jehoiada, the son of Benaiah, and Abiathar, and the general of the king's army was Joab. So you see there, they were in the exalted position. Ahithophel was the only counselor that is ever mentioned. And then, of course, and Hushai, as the king's sidekick there, his companion, that are mentioned as his counselor. David was a wise man, and to have a counselor that could give wisdom and give right answers all the time as the oracles of God, it says, as God's word. And yet, one time that he was crossed and he was confounded, and his counsel was turned to foolishness, and he went out and hanged himself. That's how, I guess, how absorbed he was in knowing the truth. And I think, and part of it probably was that, well, it says another place, I don't know if we'll see that here, but as we finish the chapter, but he says, Ahithophel said, I can't remember exactly where, oh, maybe we'll see it here. But anyway, he said that now, because they didn't follow my counsel and take David right now, Absalom's kingdom is doomed. Absalom's kingdom will not stand and will not last. And so that's why he didn't want to wait around to be killed by David when he came back and took over. That's a thinking of committing suicide. I mean, we see people like big shots in the news, that they get caught for some heinous crime and they get put up, and what do? They commit suicide, supposedly. I'm sure some of them do, and some of them probably are assassinated or whatever, but whatever it is, we see that happen. And so I think that's what he was doing here. Just knowing that he was with a failing kingdom. Absalom wouldn't listen to him, and therefore the kingdom was going to fall because he knew he was right. Okay, so verse 24. And David came to Mahanaim, and Absalom passed over Jordan, and he and all the men of Israel with him. And Absalom made Amasa captain of the host instead of Joab, which Amasa was a man's son, whose name was Ithra, an Israelite, that went into Abigail, the daughter of Nahash, sister to Zeruiah, Joab's mother. Now, of course, that's the sister to David. Okay, Zeruiah. And so, boy, these things get really, see the families all twisted up here. You got to do a lot of studying, and then you can't keep them all straight. Verse 26, so Israel and Absalom pitched in the land of Gilead. And it came to pass when David was come to Mahanaim, that Shobai, the son of Nahash of Reba of the children of Ammon, and Machir, the son of Amiel of Lodabar, and Barzillai, the Gileadite of Rogelim, brought beds and basins, earthen vessels, wheat and barley, flour, parched corn, beans and lentils, and parched pulse, and honey and butter and sheep, and cheese of kine for David, and for the people that were with him to eat. For they said, the people is hungry and weary and thirsty in the wilderness. And so these are some of the kind-hearted people that are mentioned and where they're from that helped out David and all his family in exile again. Now we know David spent a lot of years in exile under King Saul, and then also before he was able to come over from Hebron into Jerusalem and take over the kingdom, the whole kingdom there. Nice helpers, and we'll see them mentioned again, and how David's kindness to them after he comes back, or as he comes back to Jerusalem. We'll see Barzillai and so forth, and more about him. So this is just looking at this, thinking about the discernment of counsel. Ezekiel, look at Ezra. Ezekiel 44. Yeah, going the wrong way here. Ezekiel 44. Jeremiah, Lamentations, Ezekiel 44, verse 23. It says there in Ezekiel 44, verse 23, here they are the priests. This is one of the ordinances of the priests, and the priests were to teach them. It says in verse 23, they shall teach my people the difference between the holy and profane, and cause them to discern between the unclean and the clean. No gray areas there. Just teach the people what to do, how to discern between good and evil, right and wrong, all these things. The clean, that's the pure. The undefiled is what clean is. Yes, I know that there are the clean, unclean animals, but that's not what we're talking about here. The clean, the pure and undefiled, the unclean. That's under the ceremonial laws. They had uncleanness and also the sinful condition of men. That's what it's basically talking about, the sinful condition of men being unclean. They're going to discern between the clean and the unclean, between the good and the bad, the right and the wrong, the evil and the good things, so forth. And that's what the priests were supposed to teach. Listen, that's what we get from God's Word. The teaching, how to discern right and wrong, how to discern between the clean and the unclean. Solomon, and we're not going to go there in 1 Kings, where he had his dream after he became king. He dreamed with God. It was between him and God. And he had asked for discernment between the good and the evil so he could take care of so many people. He said, I'm just overwhelmed, God, and it pleased God, and God says, you're going to be the wisest man. I'm going to make you the wisest man to ever walk on this earth. You're the man that is going to be looked to for wisdom. And yet in all his wisdom, he failed in understanding, didn't he? He got knowledge, got wisdom, but without understanding is to depart from evil, the Bible says. That is understanding. But he didn't depart from the wickedness of going in and bringing all the women, the concubines, and the wives. And they stole his heart and turned it to the hearts of their own, which was idolatry and fornication and so forth. So you have to have discernment and counsel. You have to be able to discern between the right and wrong. Solomon didn't discern, and he went and did wrong things there. One more. This has been one of mine in Ezra, chapter 3. In Ezra chapter 3, okay, I'm glad we're not doing this as a sword drill. I'm sure several of you have it already. Ezra chapter 3. There we go. Ezra. Now Ezra is about when King Cyrus sent back the captives that were in his captivity to rebuild the temple. And then Ezra and Nehemiah was back to rebuild the city walls and to secure them. But in Ezra chapter 3, we see that they have laid the foundation of the new temple. And it was so pathetic compared to the old temple, the original temple, that the old men that had seen the old place were crying. They were just weeping. The young men thought, oh, great, you know, and they were rejoicing and shouting for joy. And how wonderful it was that, yes, the foundation is laid. And there was a problem with discernment as people heard that. So there in Ezra chapter 3 and verse 13, well, let's read in verse 11. They sang together by chorus and praising, giving thanks to the Lord because he is good, for his mercy endureth forever toward Israel. And all the people shouted with a great shout when they praised the Lord, because the foundation of the house of the Lord was laid. But many of the priests and Levites and chief of the fathers that were ancient men. Now, in order to see this and remember, they had to be over 72 years old. So that's when they were in captivity. And so these ancient men that had seen the first house when the foundation of this house was laid before their eyes, wept with a loud voice. And many shouted aloud for joy.